ASMR, and today we're going to be looking at Play Magazine. This is September 2005 edition, and the main feature is, of course, Dirge of Cerberus. Only kidding. The main feature is Magna, Carta, which was a Korean RPG. So we're going to take a look at that. Let's jump right into it. So, first up, this is kind of interesting. This calls out the different box art that was used for the Ratchet and Clank games for the PlayStation 2, and you can see how they're completely different covers that were used. I think that's so interesting. I'm not sure how much that happens anymore with having totally different box art. This showed some of the readers most wanted. There was Legend of Zelda, Twilight Princess, Final Fantasy XII, Kingdom Hearts 2, Death Jr., and Shadow of the Colossus. Some pretty great games were coming out. I know I was super excited for Twilight Princess to come out. It kept getting delayed and delayed. And we know that one of the reasons is they wanted to also have it be released on the Wii in addition to the GameCube. So Nintendo pushed it out until that was possible. I still bought the GameCube version because that's the system that I had. Man, I remember these memory cards were so weenie and so expensive at the same time. I'm happy we're beyond these tiny SD cards. That's one thing that's gotten a lot better is the price for storage. Okay, here we go. Magna Carta, Tears of Blood. Very edgy sounding. With another really cool full art page right here. was for the PlayStation 2 and maybe even PSP. I don't think it reviewed super well, but I'm sure it still had its fans. There was, I feel like, a ton of JRPGs that were coming out in the PS2 era, so there was certainly a lot of competition. This says that Magna Carta was the first RPG developed for the PlayStation 2 in Korea. That's pretty interesting. Did anyone play this game? And did you think it was a cool game, or would you give it a pass? So here's that little, it's really just like a half of a page of text for Dirge of Cerberus, Final Fantasy VII, Mysterious Vincent Valentine, may be humanity's only hope. I remember thinking this was a pretty cool looking game at the time that looked like a little bit more action heavy. Shining Force Neo. I had to turn on the light, it was getting kind of dark on me. Crash Team Racing. This was another thing that was pretty popular at the time, was to put your, mascot type character in a cart and try to get in on some of that Mario Kart money. The preview gallery. Resident Evil 5 was in there. I remember watching and rewatching that initial teaser RE5 trailer so many times. I was a huge fan of Resident Evil 4, so my excitement to play this game was pretty huge, and it just looked so much better graphically than all the other stuff that we were seeing at the time. Christmas, Oogie's Revenge. There should be a review of that in the next issue, so that'll be fun to take a look at that. So, kind of like I was talking about, we have Jak X Combat Racing. So this is leaning into a little bit more of the combat element of the racing. I talked about this one a bit more in the first Play magazine than I did. These came with some basic 3D glasses, so that was kind of the gimmick of that game, that you could enable that if you were so inclined. I'm pretty sure I played the entire thing without those 3D glasses, though. I'm pretty surprised that the Sly franchise hasn't made a return yet. This is the review section, and first up we have Legend of K. Gets an impressive 9.0. I've never played that game, but according to this, it's pretty good. Genji, Dawn of the Samurai, gets an 8.5. The Incredible Hulk Ultimate Destruction. I feel like that's a fan favorite, and I think that could make a comeback too, as an open world kind of Destructathon game. That could be pretty cool. The Sonic Gems collection gets an 8.5. Lunar Dragon Song. Here's some cool stuff on this page. MediEvil Resurrection. They gave that an 8.5. That's one that I've played. And this came out on the PSP. Has anyone seen Sir Daniel Fortescue? And if you're unfamiliar, the PSP used these small discs that were called UMDs. So it was just this little disc that was in your PSP. So that was a pretty nifty way to play games. It could hold a lot of data, but you did have a spinning disc, so the load times were a little long compared to like DS games, but it was still pretty neat. And then we have Castlevania Dawn of Sorrow. I think this is another one that will get reviewed next month. But this is a super fun game, and I know that they've just released this as like a collection with some of the other earlier handheld Castlevania games. But Dawn of Sorrow was my personal favorite of the ones that I played. And on this page we have Pack and Roll, which was for the DS, and that's another one that I played. And in this game, you used the stylus on the bottom screen, and this kind of was like a trackball that you would spin in different directions to control Pac-Man throughout the levels. So this is another one that was pretty fun. I'm not aware that this was ever ported over anywhere, so it might be stuck on the DS, but I'd have to look into that. But certainly a fun little experimental game. This is pretty interesting. This is the Killer desktop app, and it talks about LimeWire. If you were a teenager in the early 2000s, you probably know exactly what this app was. It was basically a person-to-person file sharing program. And so a lot of people would just download music and stuff like that. It was extremely popular. That was just a different time, I think. was pretty neat, but I never played that original game. Samurai Gun Review. It gets a 9.0. And an ad for Bio Broly. Broly is back. And then we have a feature on the Hellsing Ultimate OVA. Hell has a fresh new look. That's a pretty cool Samurai Champloo figure right there. That's pretty neat. And then we have a discussion on Final Fantasy VII Advent Children. This is another thing that at the time, and I think still today holds up okay, is the visual effects of this movie were like kind of mind-blowing to me at the time. I can't really imagine. They says it's available for DVD and UMD. I can't imagine watching this movie on a PSP. But if you're able to pick up that in the bargain bin or something, it could have been pretty neat still. Jade Empire OST. Well, that wraps up another magazine flip through. I hope you enjoyed this. There's a lot of cool games and features in the October edition of Play. So I'm probably going to be doing another one of those next month. So I'm really excited for that. And if you've watched the whole thing. I really appreciate it. And until the next one,